Tell people a little of your story.
Sure. Yeah. So when I was 3 years old, my parents divorced. And then I only saw my dad, maybe once or twice a year until the age of 13 when he was killed. And I didn't really understand how much it affected me until I started getting, up in my teenage years and my early adulthood, when I realized how much the lack of having a father figure impacted my life. I thought because I lived through it, I kind of got through it and everything was okay. And I started realizing that on paper, I was checking all the boxes, but relationally, I was a little off. And so I wanted to research it. And I have been kind of researching it on my own, both quantitative and qualitative, writing notes and talking to people. And I'm used to doing research. And I really wanted to understand other women. And in college, I went into a bookstore looking to figure myself out, and there wasn't one book. And so at that point, in my head, I was like, I got to write a book about fatherless daughters because I want them to understand who we are. And at that point, the statistics were sad. It was in the 80s, and the statistics were basically that you were going to go to jail or end up a teenage pregnant girl, that you just weren't going to be successful. And that's not the facts. I mean, the reality is there's a lot of positivity, and it's just how you turn that pain into purpose and what you do with it. That's all it is.
Yeah, because I mean, essentially, that's what you did. You took
Oh yeah.
very much was a and so dive into that a little more, where the women watching this can see, because I know even with the men that I deal with, a lot of them don't understand the impact of being fatherless, or they deny that they've been impacted by their dad. They're like, I don't care about that old man. I've never been impacted. Well, they don't understand they really have been emotionally angry. There's all these things going on. But give women an idea of some of the things that you felt growing up as a result of a fatherless daughter.
Well, first, let me go back to the men. The men and the women are a lot of the same. The abandonment and the issues are all kind of the same. But the reality is a lot of people don't want to give their adulthood away. So they don't want to go back and do the work that was put onto them by a parent or a situation, because they feel like, listen, I've already gotten through it. I don't want to go back and do work that wasn't even my screw up, right? So I think as a child, what I did is became an adult really young, where I was handling things. I was making these long-term goals in my head so I wouldn't be in the same situation as an adult. I think it's really imperative to define what that means. And fatherlessness is not just a father who's died. It's a lack of an emotional bond, because of abandonment, addiction, someone who's a workaholic, or someone who just doesn't emotionally understand their child. And, a dad could be sitting with a child and be present and financially paying for the roof over their head, but not have any idea what's going on with them. And a lot of times that's worse. So I think people that have a father who die usually are more in the fairy tale. They can make up what they need to make up. They can heal themselves, and they remain kind of an enigma, right? And I think from a research that we did, statistically, if your father died, you immortalize them and you're a little bit more sad. Whereas the women or men that are abandoned due to divorce or addiction or abuse or incarceration or whatever it is, they seem to harbor more resentment and more outward anger. And so they act out in a different way. It's a pendulum, but the reality is everything is out of fear of not being loved and the fear of imminent abandonment all over again.
I had somebody ask me, this has been a few years ago, what's worse from a father wound standpoint?
Yeah.
I talk so much about father wounds. Is it having a dad who wounded you that's still alive, or having a dad that wounded you that's dead? And I was like, you know what? Honestly, it's that man that's still alive, because it's a daily reminder of that wound.
Mm-hmm.
With my dad being dead, and then once I found forgiveness, and that's what kind of, started me on this path,
Yeah.
It was much easier. But I know a lot of people that their dads. I just talked to a young man the other day that he wants a relationship with his father so badly, but his father does not want a relationship with him. And so it's that rejection and abandonment and shame and unworthiness all over again, right?
Yeah, I think with death, the abandonment stops, but it depends on the narrative that the other people around you play. So if your mother or other family members are like, he was a terrible father, or he had these problems, or whatever's going on, then all the stories that you have in your head start getting murky with the stories other people are telling you, which is a big no-no. I really have a big problem with parents, a mother, or a stepfather, whoever, talking negatively about the parent. Because listen, you and I know, as you grow up, you're going to figure that out yourself, right? So why not enjoy your childhood and just say, I've asked your dad, he can't be here, but you don't have to say he doesn't want to be there, or he didn't pay child support, or whatever. Whereas I think someone that's trying to get back into their dad's life and saying, pick me, what you have to do, and what I would say to that guy you were talking to, is send a message out and say, what are you capable of giving me? A phone call once a year. B, the story of my DNA. C, nothing. Or D, when I feel the urge. So that they can then set up, like, what is it that I should expect from him? And we don't ever ask that because we don't want to know, right? But I think if you know, you can have a little bit more information and go out into the world equipped.
I love it. I think, the difference in the men and women too, and how they respond to not having that father, because there's two different things. A young man wants to know that he has what it takes, that he's doing
Yeah.
a great job as a man. He needs that from his father. A young woman wants to know that she's cherished, that she's loved, and all of those things. So the way we kind of play those things out, like for me, it was, I'm going to be the life of the party. The crazier, the better, because I wanted affirmation from
Yeah.
anybody and everybody, because I didn't get it from my dad. And so women, I know, on the other hand, a lot of the stuff that they deal with is they just want to be loved. So they'll go and, unfortunately, a lot of times pick the wrong man, but just to be loved, right?
Well, listen, it's so interesting that you say that. So when I wrote the Fatherless Daughter Project, I got to pimp my book. When I
Yeah.
wrote it, the relationship chapter poured out of me. And you've written a book, and it's a feat, right? But when I wrote the book, the relationship part, I just wanted to write and write and write and write, because that's really all I ever heard about, is how do I handle this? What do I do in this situation? Which is why I wrote my next book, Love Strong. And the reality is what you have to do to learn how to not accept weak love. And weak love meaning, like, do you question yourself? Do you think you're unworthy? Do you wonder what boundaries are? Do you feel like it's always your fault? I mean, I could go on and on. And strong love is something that makes you feel empowered and loved and wanted and seen and heard, and that whatever you do is good enough. And there's a middle road there that a lot of fatherless adults don't know. So because we don't ever want to feel that pain again, and we don't want to inflict the pain that we have felt onto someone else, what we do is we take it all on. Okay, this guy, he's not giving me what I need, but it's, what, he sees me, so I'm going to stay with him, even though I don't know what it is I want. And what I would say to people that are in a relationship quandary or not getting the love they want is, you got to focus on your core values. So like with you, without your father, right? What you do and what women do is we take on male energy, right? So you might take on a lot of male energy and go, I'm going to kick everybody's butt. I'm going to be this strong, masculine guy. Where what I might do is take on the masculine energy and be seen as a ball buster, or a bitch, or a girl that doesn't put up with anything or whatever. And the reality is underneath, we're all scared. And I think the best way to understand what you need is to look at your core values. And if you don't know what those are, some people could say, well, I want someone I can trust, or I want someone who's respectful of others. What is it? Look around at mentors in your life that are in relationships that you value. what do they value if you don't know? What is something that means something to you? Does it mean something to you if a guy that you're interested in, you know, helps other people or is charitable? Or does it mean something that he does what he says he's gonna do? So for me, my dad would not show up to certain things. So when I looked for a partner, I wanted someone who did what they said they were going to do. That was really important. But until I knew that and stayed solid on that belief, I wasn't getting it.
Well, and a lot of that too, you know, so, and man, this goes pretty deep.
Yeah.
In that,
Well, it's a deep subject, John.
it is, you're right. It's the idea, you know, we were making the movie, The Father Effect, it's what I learned from so many other people is however abnormal it may seem, your normal growing up is really your normal. So if you saw your dad physically or verbally abuse your mom, you tend to think that is normal, right? And so
I don't know if you think it's normal as you get older, but you're so used to it, and through osmosis, you might be okay and you might think you're not okay. Like, I would never put up with that, but maybe that guy isn't verbally abusive, but he's emotionally abusive in the fact that he puts you through stuff, or he doesn't, you know, come home when he says he's going to come home. I look at people a lot of times and they'll say, I'm not dating anyone like my father. I'm like, okay, so your dad was a traveling salesman, but you're dating a guy in a band. Okay, so they're both gone all the time. You know, you got to look at what that looks like. And we all, there's something I write about that's really, really important to me, and it's called the mirror effect. And it's when you get in a relationship with someone that makes you look at yourself, because you turn yourself inside out to fit what that person means to you. Like, okay, I need to like sports, or I need to have my hair long, or I need to lose weight, or I got to act like I'm okay with this, this, and that. And you do everything you can to try to make that relationship work. And when it doesn't, and it's something that you feel got away, what women will do when they can't go anywhere else, because now they're brokenhearted, is they have to flip the switch and look in the mirror. And they have to say, why is it that I'm not getting this right? And what is it that I have to do about it? And I think right now in our society, men and women both, but especially women, because I'm a female, we're ready to take that head on. We don't want to go sit in a therapist's office and talk about the guy that got away. We want to talk about why did I pick him? Honey, I could preach. Let me get on the pulpit, John. What else you want to talk about?
well, no, and what I was thinking there too is, because I've seen this over and over and over again, you know, the statistics will show you, and the experts will tell you that if a young lady grew up seeing their mom be physically or verbally abusive,
Yeah,
in that younger age, they begin to think it's normal. And so in a lot of cases, they'll turn around and marry a
absolutely.
man who is verbally or physically abusive.
Yeah. I think when we're going through that process, we have starter boyfriends or starter husbands. Statistically, fatherless people marry or divorce maybe a time or two, because they can't figure it out. They're just looking for that relationship. Then they realize it's not what they want. And the cool thing is we want to love. So we're willing and able. The bad thing is we may not have the boundaries set up. And so it takes us a couple of times, right? But I do think that, and I think there are a lot of people that think they're doing the complete opposite when they're actually doing the same thing. It just looks different.
You know what? I know, because I see it in a lot of the people I know, and I was that guy. I remember thinking, I am never going to be like my old man.
Yeah.
And I turn around and I'm 41 years old and I'm like, crud, I'm just like my old man, the one I strove so hard to be opposite of.
Mm-hmm.
And people out, you know, if you got real good friends, they'll tell you,
They'll call you out.
you're just like your dad, or you're whatever, you know. And so you try so hard to not be that, but you don't realize that you are. Now,
You know what's interesting? That when you grow up fatherless, you always surround yourself, whether you're aware of it or not, with other people that are fatherless, right? And so a lot of times what you do is they become your ride or die. They're like your family, right? But as you get older, they might be suffering through some of the same stuff you're kind of dealing with. And so what I think you have to do is when you grow up without a father, and let's say he died young like our fathers did, you want to identify with them. You want someone to say you look like him, or you laugh like him, or you're as artistic as he is, because you need the connection. And so I think what happens is you go through your life trying to figure out what part of him do I want to keep and what part is it okay to discard. And that's the hard part, because then you have to come with the reality of, you know what, there's certain things, because he was human, that I don't want to do and I don't like, and I'm an adult and I can choose.
I think the grieving part too, because everybody kind of goes through this grieving piece with their dads, whether he's still alive or dead.
Mm-hmm.
It's that relationship for that person, that
Oh, yeah.
who has been abandoned, and their dad doesn't want to have anything to do with them. We both, men and women, process anger differently. And so it's even that can become.
Listen,
so
you could watch any reality show today, and I could pick out which girl's fatherless, like in 2 seconds. And, I was watching one of them not the other night, and there was a father-daughter dance with a couple that were getting married, and I started crying. My dad died in 1984, and I started crying because that emotion is always there. You're always missing them. You're always missing.
And don't you see what's interesting is once we started doing the project and the movie, and I started doing, stuff about the father effect, I started seeing everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
You could I could spot another fatherless dude. Like
Me too.
Probably spot the other fatherless daughter.
I can find them in the nail salon, at a funeral. It doesn't matter where they are. And I'll tell you, you also become a big investigator and a people person. So you walk into anywhere and you can connect to people because you see them and you understand, and you want to give them a place that's safe, right? Like, I see you, I hear you. But I think for me, it was imperative because as a woman, you're told a lot of times, you're messed up, or you're crazy, or you're too emotional, or you don't have enough emotional intelligence, or blah, 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 right? And the reality is we get sick of hearing it and taking it. So we keep our mouths shut and we don't really show who we really are. And what I would like to encourage women and men to do everywhere is be who you are. And take constructive criticism. If you have a mentor or a stand-in father figure, or your best friend, or someone at work. I mean, one of the things that I see, I work at a Fortune 500 company, is I see a lot of women that want that male mentor. They want that person to lead them. And unfortunately, for a lot of years in corporate America, it is the male leaders that give us a chance. Maybe not as much anymore, but that is kind of how it starts. So you can't take away how important you are, whether it's in work or in a personal life, you are to that woman. Because every woman that I talked to in leadership had a male figure that said, I believe in you. I think you could do better. I think you should ask for more. And it changes your life. So I encourage men to always do that because we need you. We need you.
Now tell me, you ended up marrying this good-looking stud of a man, basketball player, that I've only seen pictures of up to this point. I hadn't met him in person, but yeah. How did being a fatherless daughter, tell me the real struggle of how that played out in your life as you met him and you guys kind of worked through some of that?
You're giving me a lot of segues, John. So I wrote a script, a television series called The Coach's Wife. And it's based on my husband, obviously, in basketball, and me a little bit. And I may turn into a book, I don't know, but I'm going to do something with it. But I think the reality is I met him at a time that he was young. He's 7 years younger than me. And I had a lot of space and time because he wasn't ready to get married or settle down, and I definitely didn't need to. Where I had a lot of space and time to figure myself out. He was on the road, doing all the stuff he was doing, basketball, and it gave me a lot of time to work on myself. But I'll tell you, the real deal is we have the same core traits and the same core values, right? And I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that I wanted a man that was going to be a good father. He's an excellent father. He listens to me. He hears me. I can be everything of who I am, whether it's a flaw or not. And I think what has kept us together is the respect and the friendship and the lack of judgment. Now, we've been judging each other during coronavirus, don't get me wrong. But the reality is, having someone that you could tell your secrets to that didn't go, oh God, that's too much for me. And, the biggest thing you don't want is a fatherless daughter is to be too much, because you already feel like you were too much, and that's why you left.
Well, and to that point, was there anything, because I've heard this story too, where a fatherless daughter will get married and she has almost this fantasy, non-attainable benchmark in her head of what that man should be as a father.
100%.
And then it's like, that's setting him up to fail, because there's no way he's ever going to live up to that expectation.
So it was important to me when I wrote the Fatherless Daughter Project to put a part in there called the Men Tell All. And we interviewed a lot of men for this exact reason. Like, so if you're a girl and you're listening to this and you're having some relationship issues, you can pick up the book and literally say, here, read this, pick it up and say, read this. This is who I am and why I am the way I am. And it was important to me because what I would say to any girl listening to this is be 100% who you are, 100%. You already know what issues you have. You already know the problems that continuously come up, the things that, trigger you, the lack of boundaries you have. We already know all of that. And what I would say is, when the right guy comes along, if you don't fix it and clean it up, he's going to walk right by. Or you're going to beat him to death or test him too much, and he's going to get exhausted. And so I think you're right. I think we have a fantasy of, I did not get what I wanted, therefore I'm owed this perfect specimen. And he's got to be this. He's got to make this amount of money. He's got to look like this. He's got to be this. He's got to do this. Everybody's got to love him. All blah, blah, blah. And what you got to do, and it sounds so cliche, but you got to get right with yourself. The stuff that you keep battling with, you have to get right with yourself, which is why I wrote Love Strong, because I've done it and coached these women for 15 years. And there's a complete guide that every single girl goes through. And I've done it so much, I was like, I might as well write it.
Well, you know what, to your point too, and I think it's true for both men and women, it's the idea that, and I talk to guys all the time, and they're going from one relationship to another.
Oh, yeah.
Look, man, you've got to figure out your junk. You've got to figure out and get healthy yourself. It can't be all these women's issues. It's you. So figure out your stuff. All you're going to do is carry that into every other relationship you're in if you don't get healthy and whole yourself, right?
I tell you what's interesting. I was one of those. I mean, I have always been the person that tells everybody what to do, right? And I was so certain that I could pick out all the problems with everybody else and all the issues, and I had been there, done it, and I know it all. And the reality is I was running so fast, right? Just trying to get away from having to look back and really feel it, like truly feel pain. And I'll tell you, if I could go back and tell that girl before I did the work myself, you're going to have an amazing life. It's going to be magical. And guess what? You won't carry a load anymore. I don't wake up full of anxiety. I don't stress out. I know I'm worth it. You know, like I have boundaries. I have things that I want to accomplish. And all the stuff that I could not do because I was so stuck up here in my loop thoughts and ruminating over countless situations stopped me from being and doing all the things I love to do. Write books, write television, help women, be a leader, and a big advocate for women, and all that stuff I could not do. So I could not get to the other side of the rainbow and live the purposeful life I'm supposed to live because I was so stuck in what happened. And there's a freedom in that I wish I could bottle up and hand out.
You know what? I hear you. And I look at my own life, and I've said this many times. I wished I would have heard a message like ours.
Oh, yeah.
I was in college, because it could have prevented a lot of pain and suffering for me, because
Yep.
it's like I wouldn't have struggled with alcohol to medicate this wound and this pain and this rejection and abandonment and unworthiness and all of that stuff. And we all deal with it differently. But it's like you said, man, go get after your stuff. Do the work, because that hard work is going to pay off like crazy down the road, the quicker you do it.
The hallmark of a fatherless daughter is isolation. And what we do to feel better is isolate. Now that might look like I'm binge watching Netflix, or I don't want to go out for 2 weeks, or you know what, I'm just going to hang at home with my cat, or whatever it is. But the reality is, it might not be that you're outwardly drinking or doing drugs, but are you taking NyQuil to sleep? Are you taking melatonin? Are you zoning out on television so you don't have to think? There's all these different levels of isolation, but the reality is, sometimes we need some self-care and we want to watch TV or go take a walk or spend a weekend in bed. That's normal. But if you're consistently doing that, you're isolating. And I would say life's just going to pass you by.
You brought this up a while ago too, and I find this, I know it was true in my own life, and you mentioned a little bit of it in your life, is, we already have this major issue within society today is pretending to be somebody we're not because of social media and all the other stuff. But I think fatherless men and women have an even greater need to prove to the world. So it leads into this, man, I'm going to do everything I can to appear to be this amazing person who has everything together, this poser, right? This fraud, if you will, because I don't want people to think any less of me because of my stuff to begin with, the unworthiness and everything else you've dealt with. I'm going to go over the top and do crazy things to appear to be this amazing person, just so I don't have to go deal with rejection or the idea that somebody may not like me, right?
Also, a lot of people on social media, we're breeding narcissism, right? As a writer, I have to be on social media to sell books, and I want to do it for the right reasons. But the reality is, a lot of people are on there and they're going from a really big high to a really low low. So they have X amount of followers and they're taking a picture, and they're saying, this is what my life is, and this is this, and this is that, and that TV or that camera goes off, or you shut down your Insta story or whatever. And the reality is you're stuck right there with yourself. So I say, whoever you are, be everywhere. If you got to muscle it up, the energy to put something out there on social media, and the real you is stuck at home crying and doing whatever, you're just faking it, till you make it. And you probably won't make it till you do a little bit of work. And, there's so many ways that we have today to act like we have it together, right? If we have a good job, if we are in a relationship, who knows what's going on behind closed doors, right? If we appear that we're the PTA mom or whatever, and we're doing everything we're supposed to do at school, I would just say, be happy with yourself alone, and then invite other people into your world. And sometimes that's hard because we're lonely, and it takes a couple of failures to get it right. But what I find the most intriguing is that fatherless daughters get it right in every aspect of their life. They're the best friend, they're loyal, a lot of them make six figures or more, believe it or not. Or if they don't, they're the best babysitter, or they're the best PTA mom, or they're the best nurse or teacher, or whatever they decide, they do really well. But when it comes to the relationship piece, it just doesn't work. And they keep going, in circles. And they're so frustrated because the world's telling them they got it together. But emotionally, they just haven't figured it out. And I'm still that girl. I have figured it out in the fact that I'm a writer and I help, fatherless daughters and women, and I'm married and I have kids, but I'm still broken. I mean, we still have to get tune-ups, right?
Absolutely. I still to this day will something will come back and I'll be reminded,
Oh yeah.
Now it's different in the way that I deal with it. And I think that's the part for me that's so freeing. And I know it is for you too. For so many years, I pretended to be, and try it again, so hard to be somebody that I wasn't. When you can be the real you, oh my goodness, it is like a freedom. And I don't give a rip about what anybody else thinks. Like I used to be so obsessed with that. It's like, hey, I am who I am. Take it or leave it. But I'm all me, and I'm going to share my junk, and I'm going to tell my story. And man, hopefully it will help somebody. But just like you're doing, the freedom that comes from that, and the earlier you do that, the hard work to get there, the better, right?
Well, I think when Kobe Bryant died and there was this phenomena about girl dads, I was happy to see that you and I have been doing this work for many, many, many decades, right? Well, not many, 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 but many, many decades. And I don't feel like the platform is reached a pinnacle. Like, we sit up there and we talk about really serious issues in the world, right? Addiction, cancer, eating disorders. I mean, the list goes on and on. Fatherlessness doesn't get a platform. It's something our society still tries to kind of brush under the rug. If a mother leaves, it is a catastrophe. Like, you don't hear of it that often. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. If a father leaves, it's just like a Saturday. And we need y'all. We need these men in our lives. And now I think men are more and more and more being very much a part of their children's lives. And I think you're kind of seen as, not so great of a person if you're not checked in. And so there's starting to be some kind of consequence to that. But I wish my whole goal in life is, and I could die happy if we could make this a real platform. And you and I are feet on the street and working so hard to do it. But I wish there was someone that would come along and pluck us out of obscurity. All the people doing this really major work with fatherlessness, and let us use these platforms because, it's 1 in 3 women are fatherless, and it's big. And, statistically for men, it's about the same. And if you look at people that are incarcerated or all the different things that are going on in our life, we're surrounded with those people all day long and they're hurting. And I would give everything that I had to do this work all the time.
That's the message, I think, and this is the message that I try to tell everybody is, and you said it, it's you're not alone. Mm-mm. We're all jacked up. We all got our stuff. We're just trying to figure it out, right? So let's figure it out together. How do we do that? Mm-hmm. And I know you being able to share your story, the many times that a young woman looks in your eyes and goes, wow, I thought I was the only one, or I thought I was the only messed up one, right?
But you know what happens, John? I go give a speech, and the first people are like this, and then, you see them dotting their I's, and you see them kind of leaning in forward. And I write about this in the book. The speech is over, you're signing books, and people are coming up and looking around and they're like, I need to talk to you. You know, they still don't want to tell anybody. And you're like, hello, this is a safe space, right? But it's still this shrouded with like, it's my fault, or I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, there's something wrong with me. And I think I would encourage women, you know, I remember when I wrote the Fatherless Daughter Project and we were talking to that publishing house, and the couple of covers that they sent first were like pitiful. It was like a girl sitting at the end of a dock looking out at the water, or a wilted rose. And I'm like, what? Like, make it bright and happy. I'm not saying every girl wants to walk around like this in college and go, look at me. You know, that's all I'm saying. But the reality is we can own this because it's about them. It's not about us. It's about the guy that left. It's not about us. And I can promise you, I work with a lot of men too. And there's a big part of men out there that were not in their children's lives that would do anything to get back in. They just don't know how. And they don't want to mess up. So they stay away. And it's sad.
It's that fear. You know, one of my favorite movies, and I think because of this topic, is Good Will Hunting. And there's the scene in there where Robin Williams is playing the counselor to Matt Damon's character. Yeah. And he starts saying, it's not your fault.
Oh.
It's not your fault. It's not your fault. And Damon starts out all tough, and then eventually he's crying. Because, to your point, people need to know, you know, it wasn't my fault that my dad killed himself. It wasn't your fault that your dad chose to do what he did, right? To leave and all that. It's not your fault. People need to know and hear that because it's true.
Well, I think that for men out there that want to get back into a daughter's life or a son's life, you know, there's ways to do it. And I talk about that a lot. And there's also ways for women to figure out as an adult, do I let him back in? I see a lot of fathers that weren't great fathers, but they're great grandfathers, right? And so that's hard to kind of deal with and understand. But when you talk about movies, the movie that I kind of latch on to is The Runaway Bride with Julia Roberts, where she doesn't even know what kind of eggs she likes, right? And the reality is she's going and finding these men going, well, I'll just acclimate to what they want. And you might think, oh, I got this strong voice, but reality is you're faking it in some parts, right? And so I look at Julia Roberts, who is like, well, this guy loves me, so I'll go here. This guy, I think he loves me. What many fatherless daughters do, many, is they choose people that they can leave first. So they choose a person that they know they can break their heart and will not get their heart broken. And when they go and choose a guy that they can truly love, that they really want to give their self to 100%, that could leave them, that is when the work starts.
You know, I love that because it goes into the psychology behind, I'm going to leave him before he can leave me. The abandonment issue, right? That abandonment issue.
And we test them. We test men constantly. Well, you said you were going to call, so I'm going to break up with you. I mean, it's like crazy roller coaster. And you can't test people that much because nobody wants to take the test.
Yeah, it's a ton of work to be in a relationship like that.
Because a lot of men feel like, I'm never going to be able to make her happy. And what the fatherless daughter's doing is saying, you can, but outwardly, I'm showing you that you can't. And so there's this internal struggle to where we're either hyper needy or totally like, I do not need you. And what we got to find is the neutral part where we're like, I'll be a good partner and you be a good partner. And you cannot do that until you rewire your little relationship GPS. You know, you got to rewire what was tinkered with, and you got to go back, which is what we talk about in Love Strong, or what I talk about in Love Strong. You got to go back and there's a guide to how you go back and you fix it. And I wanted something that a girl could take with herself to the beach or spend a month at home and do the work and then go, okay, I think I know myself now. Because reality is not everybody wants to go sit through years and years of therapy, right? Sometimes we just want to read something and that might be enough. Everybody's different. Everybody's different. Most of my therapy was about how my father died. And the other side of it was, oh, that affected me. I didn't realize it, you know? But I did not do that and get into that work until that mirror effect when a guy crushed me. It was a good guy that, you know, I was mixed up. And he wasn't the right guy. He wasn't, you know, God, but I loved him and I wanted to make it work. And I was a little too messed up. He wasn't the best catch at the time, but in another time and place, we would have had a great relationship. But I realized down in my soul, you know what? I keep trying to work on him and I probably need to work myself.
And really, a lot of that comes back down to being able to trust again.
Yeah.
Being able to trust because of the abandonment or whatever from your dad. It's like we try so hard to have this mentality. I am not going to get screwed again. I'm not going to get abandoned again. I don't want to go through that. So we don't trust, right?
Yeah. Or we try to hyper control everything. And I think the big takeaway with that is when you feel like you're trying to jump from the passenger seat to the driver's seat, then you're like, I want to let them lead. Oh no, I'm going to try to take the lead here and da da da. You just don't know where the lines get blurred, and you don't know what part is you, where you end and where they begin. You know, there's a codependency and you're not sure, is their life more important or is it what I feel important? And is what I feel even makes sense? And I tell a lot of men that I work with that date fatherless daughters or married to them, just let her know that you'll be back. If you fight or you go away for a guy's night or a weekend, or you've had enough and you don't talk or whatever, explain to them, when you do this, I need 2 hours to myself, but I'll be back. Because if they know you'll be back, they won't spiral.
Wow.
And your little heart can get cleaned up real quick, you know?
I love that. That's such a great advice. And I see how important it is for fatherless daughters. As we wrap up, tell people how they can connect with you and talk a little bit about your new book.
Yeah, sure. So I am on Dina Babel, anywhere that you look, Instagram, is Facebook, whatever. And then I have a separate Facebook page called the Fatherless Daughter Movement. And then I have a private page for fatherless daughters called the Fatherless Daughter Movement Tribe, because a lot of people want to get in there and talk about situations without anybody finding out. So and you just have to apply to be in that private group. Love Strong comes out June 23rd. I don't know how that's going to look in this whole world, but you can pre-order it. And it's a real world advice book on how to get the relationship you want. And that's really all it is. And it's fun. And I loved writing it. And I wish I could give it to every single woman on the street, because believe me, they all want it and they need it. And if not, their friends do. But I have a website, dinababel.com. I'm everywhere. Yes. When I'm not trying to take care of my kids and my husband and my cavapoo and life, I'm somewhere on social media.
Okay. Hey, as always, I love chatting with you. We could talk for hours on this.
Be good. I know, and I love what you're doing, John. I know how much work you put into that movie, and I try to let people see it all over the place because it's so valuable. But we're kindred spirits, and you've given your life to this cause, and I could not be more proud to have another guy out there doing this work and teaching men and helping us all realize that we need each other. So thank you for all your hard work, and thanks for reaching out.
Yeah. And you know what? Thank you for, I love what you do for fatherless daughters, and just the insight you've given tonight. It's helped me learn several things in dealing with fatherless women. And so,
oh, good.
Yeah. I learned something from you every time. So we'll do this again soon, hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah, anytime. Have a good night, John. Stay safe.
All right. Talk to you soon, girl.
Thanks. Bye-bye.